On May 30, 2010, in a hotel room in Lima, Peru, a young woman named Stephany Flores was killed by a man she had known for less than a day. Investigators later confirmed a detail that still unsettles everyone who hears it. It was exactly 5 years, to the same calendar day, since another young woman had vanished on a Caribbean island, last seen with that same man. Her name was Natalee Holloway. For 18 years, he was the prime suspect in her disappearance, and never once formally charged with it. 2 governments, 2 legal systems, and 1 mother spent 18 years waiting for an answer that neither system, on its own, could produce. This is the story of how one confirmed murder finally forced the truth out about the first, and what it cost, across 3 countries and nearly 2 decades, to get there. Natalee Holloway was 18 years old, and by every account from the people who knew her, she was exactly where she was supposed to be that week, celebrating. She had just graduated high school in Mountain Brook, Alabama, with honors, and was headed to the University of Alabama that fall to study pre-medicine. She'd been on the school's dance and cheer squads, kept a spot on the honor roll every semester, and by her friends' telling was the one who organized everyone else's plans, not just her own. Her mother, Beth, would later describe her as disciplined, funny, close to her younger brother and step-siblings, the kind of daughter who called home to check in without being asked. In May 2005, Natalee joined more than 100 classmates on a graduation trip to Aruba, a week booked through their high school, complete with a chaperoned resort stay and a set schedule of supervised outings, the kind of trip thousands of American graduating seniors took that same year without incident. On her last night on the island, she went out with friends to a strip of bars near the hotel. That's where she met a 21-year-old local named Joran van der Sloot, the son of a sitting judge on the island. She was seen leaving with him, and 2 of his friends, sometime after 1 a.m. It was the last confirmed sighting of Natalee Holloway alive. The next morning, Natalee didn't check in for the flight home. Her friends raised the alarm within hours. Aruban police, FBI agents flown in to assist, cadaver dogs, and hundreds of local volunteers searched the island's coastline, its caves, even its landfills, for weeks, then months. No body was ever found. Van der Sloot was arrested days after her disappearance, along with 2 brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpo, who'd been with him that night. The brothers were held, questioned, and eventually released without charge as investigators focused on Van der Sloot's own shifting account. His story changed more than once. He first denied being with her, then admitted it, then gave a version where he said he'd left her alone on a beach, awake, around 3 a.m. Aruban prosecutors held Van der Sloot twice over the following 2 years, and released him each time. There was no body, and under Aruban law, without a body or direct physical evidence, they said they couldn't sustain a murder charge. In 2007, the case against him was formally closed for lack of evidence. Not dropped because he was cleared. Closed because the system couldn't move forward. He stayed in the public eye for years afterward, giving interviews, appearing on American television, at one point describing a version of Natalee's death to an undercover reporter on hidden camera in exchange for a reported payment, which he later recanted, calling it a fabrication he'd sold for money. Prosecutors reviewed the recording. It still wasn't enough, under Aruban law, to bring a charge. American diplomats and the FBI continued assisting Aruban authorities for years afterward, but without jurisdiction of their own on the island, and without a body, there was little the U.S. side could do beyond offering resources and pressure. By 2010, Van der Sloot had left Aruba and was living between the Netherlands, the United States, and South America, reportedly supporting himself partly through poker. According to later court filings, He had already attempted to extort Beth Holloway once before, offering, falsely, to reveal where Natalee's body was in exchange for money, a scheme that collapsed when the payment trail was traced. And then, on May 30th, 5 years to the day since Natalee vanished, he was at a casino in Lima, Peru. The woman he met that night was Stephany Flores, 21 years old, a business administration student and daughter of a well-known Peruvian former legislator, out celebrating with friends the way any young adult might on a weekend. By her family's account, she was ambitious, close to her father, weeks away from finishing her degree, and had plans to travel abroad once she graduated. Peruvian investigators later reconstructed what happened next from hotel and forensic records. In a shared hotel room, Flores reportedly saw case files about Natalee Holloway open on van der Sloot's laptop. Within hours, she was dead. Unlike Aruba, Peru had a body, a sealed crime scene, hotel security records, and physical evidence connecting him directly to it, the exact combination of proof that had never existed in Natalee's case. Van der Sloot was arrested fleeing toward Chile days later. He initially argued self-defense. Peruvian prosecutors rejected that account, citing the physical evidence at the scene. In January 2012, a Peruvian court convicted him of Stephany Flores's murder and sentenced him to 28 years. For the first time, a court had put him behind bars, but it was still, officially, only for one killing. Flores's family gave victim impact statements at sentencing, describing the daughter and sister they'd lost. The court's written judgment cited the strength of the physical evidence as decisive. Natalee Holloway's case, meanwhile, remained unsolved, sitting in a file marked closed, 7 years after she disappeared. In 2023, still serving his Peruvian sentence, Van der Sloot tried one more time to extort Beth Holloway, offering, again, to reveal where her daughter's remains were, in exchange for money. The same scheme, run a second time. This time, U.S. federal investigators built a wire fraud and extortion case around the payments and recordings. He was extradited to the United States to face it. And as part of a guilty plea to federal extortion and fraud charges, under oath, in an American courtroom, Joran van der Sloot finally described what happened to Natalee Holloway on that beach in 2005. According to his sworn account, he made a sexual advance she did not consent to. When she resisted, he assaulted her, she died from that assault, and he disposed of her body in the ocean. 18 years of silence, closed files, and denial, answered, finally, in a courtroom transcript. In October 2023, a U.S. federal court sentenced Van der Sloot to 20 years for the extortion scheme, to be served alongside his Peruvian sentence, meaning, in practice, he is expected to remain incarcerated well into his own old age. The FBI's Birmingham field office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Beth Holloway all said, in their own words, effectively the same thing: the case was closed. Not because a jury in Aruba ever delivered a verdict on Natalee's murder, one never could, under that country's laws, but because a sworn confession, tied to a real conviction and a real sentence, had finally taken its place. The plea agreement itself was narrowly about the extortion scheme. U.S. prosecutors had no jurisdiction to charge him with a killing that happened on foreign soil years earlier, but it required his confession to Natalee's murder as a condition of the deal, on the record, under penalty of perjury. Beth Holloway has said publicly that the confession, while not the outcome she wanted for 18 years, at least gave her something the Aruban system never could, an answer, in his own words, spoken under oath, and a legal record she could finally point to. Stephany Flores's family, in Peru, has expressed something similar in their own public statements, that his conviction there was never only about their own daughter, but about a pattern that had already cost one young woman her life before it reached theirs. It took 2 countries, 1 confirmed murder, and 18 years for the truth about Natalee Holloway to reach a courtroom. That gap, between what investigators suspected and what the law could actually prove, is the real story here, not a clever man who evaded justice, but a legal system, stretched across island jurisdictions and international borders, that took decades to close a door it should never have had to leave open. 2 families, on 2 continents, ended up bound together by the same unresolved question, and it took the second tragedy to finally answer the first. If a case like this raises questions for you about how justice crosses borders, or fails to, that's worth sitting with. We'll keep telling these stories with the same care. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one.